Hello, Andrew. How you doing? Okay, so before we take a look at the images, I just want to kind of address some of your writing here. You're a thinker, and that's pretty cool. And I just want to address some of the things that you're talking here because I agree with a lot of what you're saying, specifically because you give reasoning behind the things that you say. So I really want to address one thing, and mainly that I'm really interested in. One of the comments you made is that you want to keep this black and white. And you gave a good reason for keeping it black and white. And I think that one of the things I think is so effective is the fact that you have to understand as an artist, as a photographer, as a designer, that it's Hicks' law. And Hicks' law states that, well, you know what Hicks' law is. Hicks' law states that everything you add to something takes away from what's already there. In essence, that's what Hicks' law is. And as a designer, as a professional designer, Hicks' law is ingrained in my brain. I live Hicks' law. Everything you add to something takes away from what's already there. So your comments on color to me hit home, man. It hit home. If you're trying to express things visually every time, even adding simple colors adds meaning, adds complications, adds outside meaning and subjective meaning to the viewer. So I always advise students to design in black and white. When you're designing logos, do it in black and white. Don't add color to later because it's going to interfere with the meaning, even to yourself. You may not think it, but if you're designing a logo in color, you're adding all sorts of meaning that are becoming ingrained and almost encoded in the work. So for you to say that the adding color adds meaning, you nailed it, and I agree with you 100%. All right, let's get down to business. This is fantastic. I love the presentation. I think you've done a good job. You've done a really good job. Fantastic, fantastic. Each image has its own personality. Each individual in the image has their own personality, and that personality is really coming out. Now, you mentioned you nailed a lot of these on your first try, and I think that's important too, because otherwise, what happens, and you know this as a photographer, is what happens is that the more takes that you try, especially a portrait, the more the subject is going to become accustomed to what they want to say about themselves, not necessarily what you want to say about them as a photographer, okay? So the first few shots, I think, are always the most, for a lack of a better word, the most virgin shots, because they don't bring any outside meaning. For example, this young man sitting here, that's pure right there. That is a pure expression. Okay, we shoot him 10, 12, 15 times. By the 18th time, he is going to start doing things in his mind to make himself look how he perceives himself to look in a portrait. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's really so important to nail it on the first couple of tries if you're shooting for strictly personality. Okay, and I think that you really, and that's another thing you did that's very, very smart, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay, each shot I think is just as interesting, if not more interesting than the last. Your camera settings are impeccable. Each of these shots clearly indicates the mask of the face. I think some are lit a little inconsistently. For example, and it's understandable because obviously you didn't shoot these all at the same time. So if you were able to, would be able to set up your light source, keep it consistent, and then just, okay, baby out, next, sit, shoot, out, next, sit, shoot, and so on and so forth. So you maintain this really super consistent lighting and a facial mask of each of the subjects. Can't be done, right? Not in this kind of setting. So, for example, this is lit from the side. This one seems to be lit more from the left and from the front. So that's one thing I would recommend, is trying to get some consistent lighting in here. But what you've done here, that's a great shot. That's a great shot. What you've done here is just, oh, these are so good. Are so interesting. And the way that you've really handled light is pretty amazing. I think exposure-wise and what you've done in your black and white conversions is just beautiful, just beautiful. Who's the grumpy old man? I know who it is. It's that guy. Is he the guy that you were talking about? Either that guy or that guy. I think it's that guy. I don't know. I didn't mean to call him an old man, but you talked about him as, you did. Oh, good, grumpy man. I'm sorry. I said grumpy old man. I shouldn't have said that. I meant grumpy man. But really fantastic job. Okay, one thing I want to do is I want to do this. I want to go through this really quick because I want you to notice something. I had talked about this before, But as we can see when we're going through these, each of these is a little bit of a different size. We got 12 by 8 here. Then over here you got 12 by 8. Well, actually, this is 12 by 8.01, 12 by 8, 12 by 8.01, 12 by 7.71, 12 by 8.40. So these are not consistent. And we can see that in the way that you're jumping around on the screen. See that right there? See how that jumps right there? Believe it or not, the viewer's subconscious mind picks that up, and it creates an uncomfortable visual tension where the viewer has to go process that information in their mind. So what that's doing subsequently is that's drawing attention away from your narrative, and it's forcing the viewer to use parts of the mind to try to determine what just changed. And it could be subconscious. Nonetheless, they still are using parts of their mind to determine, okay, let's take a look at this area right here. Okay, next image. Okay, something just changed. My mind's going, what is it? Something changed. Was it the size? Was it this? So momentarily taking away from or diverting my attention from the narrative at hand. Okay, so that's a matter of consistency, and that's a matter of establishing harmony through consistency. Okay, so that's one thing I found a little bit peculiar, is those varying sizes. Now these are all the same. These are all 11.98 by 7.99. Actually, they're not all the same. Some of them are just a little bit different. Let me see something here. Okay. Yeah, see how that jumps? And that's 12. That's 12.40. Well, that's 12 by 8. So a little bit of inconsistency. So I'm going to rid of those rulers. And the one thing, and finally, what I want to end on is this. I'm just going to go through this real quick. And I did mention this earlier. These are some really beautiful people. Just gorgeous stuff. Okay. So one thing I would want to mention is this, and I alluded to this before when you had submitted some of your preliminary shots, but take a look at the negative space and watch the subjects jump around the frame. See how each one is moving? Just, let's do this. Watch their eyes. Watch each individual's eyes. Okay, just concentrate on the eyes. Okay, do you notice as I'm going through here, do you notice your eye jumping around from here to here to here? Okay, let me just do that. We'll place it right on their right eye. Okay, there, jump to there, jump up to here, jump back here, jump over here, jump back here, jump over here. These are called static eye movements. And I'm just talking about as the viewer is moving around to see the focal point, which is always the eyes of a human subject, or anything with eyes is always going to be the focal point of any image. So I think that this is causing this static jumps for the eye, which we don't want to do because it creates too much eye movement through the composition. So, and then watch the negative space as well. Watch this area right here. See how that just jumped? See how big it is here? So he's in the center of the composition where everyone else is really to the left. So there's some inconsistencies there that in a perfect world we would set this presentation so that those static jumps from the eye would be as minimal as possible. And we would really be able to go through this, which is setting this cadence so the mind and the eye can concentrate on one area as we go through the presentation. Okay, hope that makes sense. I thought this was a good touch, putting her in a chair, because it adds a little bit to the reverence and respect of the elderly. So putting her in a chair, I thought was a really, really good and kind of a neat, kind of classy idea. So again, I just think you've just done a fantastic job. I'm really glad you forced yourself into shooting black and white too. I think that's a smart thing to do. And I always advise designers, student photographers, student artists, and painters, get out of your comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone and leave your comfort zone alone. Abandon your comfort zone for 2, 3, 4 months at a time and concentrate on things. And then you start creating new comfort zone. Your comfort zone horizon starts expanding and you start to grow as an artist. All right, that's what I have. Any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know. Fantastic job. Thank you so much for sharing.